All right, we're back. Episode 6 of the podcast, Dustin. I'm going to say what I say.
We have 6 episodes of this.
Well, by the time we're done, we'll have 6 episodes. Ed could just at any moment say, what did I get myself into, and click out of here.
I keep waiting for him to bow out, but the American legend stays with us.
Yeah, sitting down. I'll just, when you start doing that, it's like, I'll just move my computer screen. Like, now the camera's on me.
That doesn't work like that right now.
Yeah, but sitting down for not his first, not his second, but his third time talking to us, which you've got a very high pain tolerance, Ed.
Yeah.
We have a veteran of Vietnam War, served 2 tours of duty, 67 to 68 as a scout dog handler, which saw him, you've read about these things in history books, depending on your age, younger viewers maybe not, but in your history books, you've read about the Tet Offensive, you've read about Khe Sahn, you've read about Dak To. Our guest today did not have to read about them because he was there. Came home 68, ended up going back for a second tour, 69 to 70, where he originally started with the LRRP Rangers and then transitioned over to Apache Troop and was a point man for the Blues. Please welcome Sergeant Ed Beal. Thanks for joining us, Ed.
Hey! How you guys doing?
We're pretty good. How you doing, Ed? It's nice to see you.
Doing fine. Good to see y'all.
Sounds like you've got our weather with the rain there, and it's sunny and 70 here in Seattle.
Yeah, really. In the last week, we have nothing but rain.
Wow.
Well, I look forward to the humidity then when we visit you.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yes, really.
But again, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. Very much looking forward to the discussion, just like every time we sit down with you. I once again turn it over to my partner in crime, co-conspirator, Mr. Senior Dustin Sweet.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate the nod. Ed, you and I have talked a bunch the last couple of years. I'd go so far as to call you one of my friends. I guess I'll ask one more time. How did you end up in Vietnam?
Well, first off, I want to say this, Dustin. You're one of my you and Dave are one of my best friends.
Oh, man.
And I appreciate I appreciate it very much.
I always feel honored that I was your very first Facebook friend.
There you go. Okay, Dustin, you asked me how I got to Vietnam.
Yes, sir.
The first time.
The first time, yeah.
Or as I like to say, did you volunteer or were you voluntold?
Well, actually, when I got out of high school, I was at a point in my life I was trying to find out exactly who I was.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up, I always wanted to be a Marine. So in September 1966, I went to Marine recruiter in Greensboro, North Carolina, and went to him and volunteered for duty. And he said, yes, we'll take you, but it'll be a couple of days to get a load to go to Paris Island. So I didn't really want to wait a couple of days. I went next door to the Army recruiter, and I was down Fort Bragg that evening. That's how fast that was.
When you know, you know. Like, don't give me time to back out of this, Marines.
Yeah, exactly.
So
well, that's fun. How long were you were in basic for a couple of weeks, and then they sent you down to Louisiana, or what? How'd you end up?
Well, actually, after I joined, went through basic training at Fort Bragg for 8 weeks. Then I went to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and took an infantry AIT. And while I was there, they was asking for volunteers to work with the scout dog units. And
cool.
So, loving animals like I do, I volunteered for it. And so that was another 3-month program right there at Fort Benning, teaching you how to handle dogs and what you needed to do. And once that training was over with, I went to Vietnam in June 1967 with the 25th IPSD attached to the 1st Cav Division. We were stationed at An Cay. That was really the main base camp there. And
so then, did that put you in northern Vietnam operating?
say again.
So what parts of Vietnam did you operate in with the dog?
Okay.
And how many dogs did you end up with?
Just one.
Just one.
And his name was Duke, and he was a beautiful black and white German Shepherd. He had a little silver to him. And we just got along real good. And I worked with him the whole tour I was there. But the first 6 months I was there, we worked around the Central Highlands and Binh Dinh province.
Okay.
Then I think it was in November '67, the 1st Cav moved north. They left 3 Corps and they moved to I Corps. And we went up there under Operation Pegasus.
Yep.
And our main objective was to go up to help relieve the Marines at Khe Sahn. And it is a different kind of war up there in I Corps it was down there and around the rice paddies and villages and stuff. And totally different kind, a lot of mountains.
Yeah, it's a totally different landscape, right?
Yes.
So you were sent to help relieve the Marines at Khe Sahn, and you said
Right.
you were pretty much one of the first people to walk in there then.
I was the second American Army soldier to walk into Khe Sahn when they helped break that siege. The company commander of the infantry unit I was with, he was going to be the first one, so I was behind him.
Well, rank has its privileges.
But I would like to say one thing about the dog I had in Vietnam.
Say as much as you like. I want to hear every Duke story you have.
Well, like I said, I kept Duke the whole year, and he probably saved our butts several times while I was out on patrol. But once I left country my first tour, I was stationed in Germany, and I got a letter from my platoon sergeant, and he told me at that time that Duke and the handler was killed by a booby trap about 2 months after I left country. Evidently, it must have been an old booby trap, and he just didn't pick up on it or detect it anyway, and it got both of them.
Oh, shucks.
No scent left on it. Well, and that's why I've never agreed with the classification that the Army has of military working dogs being property and not soldiers in themselves.
Yeah, really.
It's at this point very well proven that the military working dogs can suffer PTS just as much as their human partners.
Yeah.
And I would like to see a lot more recognition for working dogs.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
and I mean, as a dog lover, also as when I first applied to customs, I actually applied on a special announcement to be a canine handler on the southern border. So of course they sent me to Seattle with no dog. Right. That should have been my first clue.
Really.
So, but you after your first tour, you went back to Germany. How long were you in Germany, and what got you back to Vietnam?
Well, when I was in Germany, just to be very honest with you, it was kind of rough over in Germany because of the racial problem at that time in 1968. It probably spilled over from the United States to Germany, and it just got to the point where I couldn't handle it. So I actually 1049 to go back to Vietnam. A few months later, I was back in country again. I just couldn't handle the racial disparity in Germany at that time.
Well, I talked to Craig about that the other day. He said when you're in country, you're your teammates, you're your brothers, like everyone's there to survive. But once you start getting farther and farther away from the front at that time. There was
You know,
definitely.
I probably had a lot to do with it too. You know, I just felt out of place, and I had to correct it just as fast and as I could. So.
Well, and was it also hard for you as someone who's seen, not just combat, but some of the most well-known combat of the war, to then be back in Germany and having to answer to and salute people who, hadn't been to the war, and in some cases, did you find it that there was some friction between officers who hadn't been to the war commanding people with actual experience? Like, what was that like to come from a war zone to to a base?
It was strange. I always respected my higher ups, but there was still a part of, just like you had said, it's like they had something against us at times, and at times I felt like we were picked on, compared to non-combatives to combative personnel, and I didn't like that. It was just a hodgepodge of a lot of different things that just made me feel uncomfortable, and I had to make a change. I had to go back to where I wanted to be.
So you did get back to Vietnam, and you've told us before that you wanted to join more of a specialized team where maybe, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but in your first tour, you felt there was, in the bigger units, maybe not everyone's on the same page and it got kind of dangerous. So you wanted to join a team where everyone wanted to be there. And where did that lead you? And stop me if I'm wrong about what you had said, but where did that lead you with that thought?
Well, like working with the 25th, my first tour, the company commanders would request scout dog handlers. And I worked with so many different infantry companies with the first Cav, it's hard to keep up with, but I've worked with a bunch of them. But anyway, I kind of lost my chain of thought there. Can you?
No, but then so when you.
Oh yeah. I remember now. It was like working with these different infantry companies. I did see the big picture, and some of these guys actually scared me because they didn't take things seriously. And you could see a little problem arise in the ranks and everything like that. Some guys would do anything to get out of the field, during a firefight, and they might want to stick their arm up and hope they get shot just to get out of the field, But seeing so much of that stuff, when I went back my second tour, I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go with a more specialized unit. And so once I landed at Khe Sahn, not Khe Sahn, but Cameron Bay, my second tour, that's when I met Craig Jurgensen. And we got to talking and everything. And while we were standing around talking, they was asking for volunteers to go with the Ranger units with the first Cav. So we both volunteered. And it was probably one of the best units I ever served with. And just the people itself within the unit was outstanding. We go out on different kind of missions. I wouldn't have to worry about the guy to my side or to my back. We all had a job to do, and we did it. And I loved the 75th Hotel Company 75th Ranger. There was a very good unit. But after Craig left the unit in November of '69, we still stayed in contact when he was an Alpha Troop. They kept telling me, you need to come on over here. So the 1st of January 1970 is when I made that change. I've done so much and seen so much with Hotel Company. I said, well, maybe I can kind of calm down a little bit and still see things. But it was actually like jumping out the frying pan into the fire at times, you know, so many times. And
I've never heard of Apache troop being described as a calm down, ease out.
yeah, exactly. I had to learn myself, you know. I had to learn myself. Well, you get to come back in the rear every night. That might be true, but they didn't say what you had to do during the day.
Oh yeah, as a LRRP, I can see, you know, having to be quiet the whole time, just, you know, always out there. And you would go out for, you know, days at a time, wouldn't you, as a LRRP?
Yeah, we'd pack for 4 days, and we'd pack for 4 days or until we got in contact. That's when they brought us in, you know. Sometimes I've only been out there a few hours, and there's a few times I spent the whole 4 days out there, but it's like you say, it's real quiet, hand signals, and you're humping a heavy load and you walking some heavy trails. And that was our job, was to sneak around and try to get as much intelligence as we possibly could, you know.
Yeah, well, and it was LRRPs who figured out, was it Firebase Ellingsworth that was about to get hit when they saw the large units moving through. And but you definitely don't want to get found when there's only 5 of you and 100 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've jumped out of that frying pan into the fire, like with Apache troop. That's a pretty good sense of it. But what was your role then in Apache troop?
When I arrived at Apache troop, I'd already had my CIB combat infantryman's badge, and they asked me what I wanted to do. You want to go with the Blues or you want to go with the Scouts? And I said, well, I stopped and thought a minute. I said, well, send me with the Scouts. Let me see how that's like. That's flying an observer in a Loach, right beside the pilot. So I went out on my first mission with them, and I was sick all day long because of the centrifugal motion. I was wanting to get shot down while I could get on the ground. I could not take it. So I only spent 1 mission doing that. And I just told him, I said, look, I'd be a danger to the pilot and the rest of you guys, man. Put me on the ground.
Well, yeah, the Scouts are kind of like NASCAR in the sky, right? Just always left turn. And like Glenn Sikowski said last week, we figured out a new exercise program. Go sit in the observer seat and try and do sit-ups as it's banking.
Really?
So, all right. So you made a very informed decision that maybe this isn't for me. You went to the Blues, and as the Blues, you and Craig were back together and took on a pretty specialized role inside the Blues, correct?
Yes, we both were squad leaders, and since I signed the Blues, and I didn't realize how much Craig wanted to walk point too, because I had Jim Braun come up to me one day, and he said, I want to ask you a question. I said, what is it, Jim? He said, why do you want to walk point all the time? And I just told him, I said, look, that's all I know. That's all I did my first tour, walk point. I didn't get to walk point with the Rangers that much. And I really, to tell you the truth, I don't think I ever did. But when I got back with the Blues, that's when me and Craig took over the roles of taking turns walking point.
Well, Craig said he liked walking point because you didn't have to determine if the person in front of you was friend or foe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, really.
In Apache Troop, you saw a lot of very memorable missions, some of which we've covered on other podcasts, but you were there on March 25th, the day that Craig was wounded and airlifted out in front of CBS. And
yes.
In fact, you are visible on camera in 2 different scenes. One of them very quickly while you're firing, but then at the end, when Richard Thrillkill is giving his little sign off, you're right behind him. I think with your mohawk at that point, or
yeah, I had a mohawk at one time. I think it was that time. But that March the 25th, I remember we flew in with a CBS crew, wanted some combat footage. They said, we got the unit to go out with. So they went out with us one morning at first light. But once we hit the ground, me and Craig noticed they were digging fighting positions right there at the tree lines. They'd just been there and they just run back in the jungle when they heard us coming. Once we got on the ground, me and Craig got together and discussed it, and we decided we asked them to leave me and him behind because you're going to walk down the trail to get your little footage, you're going to get ambushed. A few minutes later, they said, no, we can't have it. Everybody stay together. So Craig took point that day, and we walked down this trail, and wasn't too much longer. A little bit later on, I heard contact, and Craig was shot. We were ambushed coming back the trail.
They came in behind just like you said they were going to.
Yeah, exactly. They were, I knew what was going on. And
I do want to take a moment to clear something up for the audience, because this comes up a lot in the comment sections on that video on YouTube, which is closing in on 10 million views. You're a superstar, Ed. But people wonder, and some people assume it's fake because of you guys aren't wearing helmets. You and Craig aren't wearing helmets. And why weren't you wearing helmets? Ed, I'm going to give you this floor to tell people that there's a reason you didn't.
Well, the main reason I didn't is the helmet itself was very cumbersome to me. And I feel like I could operate better without it, because working with the Rangers, I worked with a flat pad, no helmets either. And I didn't even use the flak jacket. They tried I might use my helmet my first tour, but, my second tour, no, I just didn't like the helmet at all. And I know it's for protection, but I felt like I could operate better without it. And it being such a defined figure that I didn't want that on my head. So just didn't wear them.
And walking point too, the helmet was cutting off some of your
it was cumbersome. It was it had a lot of fallbacks to it, and I elected not to wear it. So
they kept giving you some though. What happened to the helmets they would give you?
When I left country, I believe I had 3 or 4 under my hooch bed.
And a couple more fell out of helicopters, didn't they?
There you go.
Nice. Dustin,
when you rotated out of Apache Troop, did you come straight back home, or did you stop off in California, or did they fly? How'd you get home?
Well, right there, 2 weeks before I was supposed to de-roast and come home my second tour, I come down with malaria again, and I had the killer kind. It was called Falciparum malaria. And that was the second time I've had it. And so they had medevaced me out of country immediately and sent me to the hospital in Japan. And I was over there for a couple months before I could even, get back home.
Wow. Well, how was Japan?
We didn't get to see much. Now, we did jump over the gates on the weekend and get on the train and go to Tokyo and have a meal on Friday evenings, but Japan at that time, they was having their little protests going on too. Yep. So,
speaking of jumping over the gate, you and Craig jumped over a gate at one point to go join Special Forces, didn't you?
Oh yeah. Me and Craig, we were so gung ho, it was unbelievable. And me and Craig had some downtime, so we said we're going to just take a little trip down to Tiananmen, and we stopped at the Cao Dai Temple and got on the rickshaws, and all of a sudden, let's go to Special Forces camp and volunteer for a team. So we did. So we went over there, but the guy that had probably have hired us for the job at the time, he wasn't in, and so we didn't get to do anything. So after we got back to the rear, we don't get that much time off so often.
Right.
But we was going to try to utilize it best way we could,
And actually, we were talking before we turned it on, Dustin, before you got on. Yesterday was a fairly significant anniversary, a 50-year anniversary of a very significant engagement for the Blues and the pilots who got you out. A LRRP team, so very dear to your heart, was ambushed in Cambodia. A couple killed right away. The radio broke in. And another was not combat efficient, right? He was too injured. So they were down 60% of their team, and they called in the Blues to help. But it was at nighttime and dense fog in the mountains to go get us. It was we need volunteers for this. And you were one of those volunteers, correct?
Yes. I remember once me and Craig heard about the contact the team had encountered, we started immediately trying to help as much as we could. And once we found out that they was going to send us in on the rescue mission, Craig went to the pilots and I went to the guys and just asked them who will volunteer to go in on this mission to try to find these guys. So I'll never forget the early in the morning, that next morning, we got on the choppers and it was raining. It was real foggy and it hasn't got real light, real good at all at that time. So we just took off and trying to go in the direction of where the last known location they were. And having the pilots like we did, they were extremely efficient and professional in everything they did. And I think Bill McIntosh was the pilot on the bird we were on. But we flew around the hills of Cambodia. He'd take that helicopter and he'd take it from side to side, trying to stay as low level as he could and trying to search for anything. And I found out later on at a reunion, Bill McIntosh had told us that he had to hold up his dog tags to make sure the ship was flying right. And I didn't know that for many years, It
was just that foggy that
it was that foggy. It was real bad. And we flew it seemed like for a good 30 or 45 minutes before we landed the birds on this particular location. And off in the distance, we saw a guy walking. And we jumped back on the birds and we flew to him and picked him up. And he was one of the team members that was trying to get back to one of the LZs to, relay what was going on and
right,
where they could go back and locate the team. But then once we found out the location, we went to the area where the team had gotten contact and we just got off the bird and started searching. But I believe they were trying to draw us into an ambush while we was there. They were still there. And we searched and searched and searched, and we even did things outside our bounds just to make sure that we could find these guys, but we never did. We never found two of them. And, I'm still dealing with that today, but there's no buts to it. I'm still dealing with that today. That's one of the hard things to do when you go in for somebody and you can't find them. And they're still listed today as missing in action. But at least we did get a couple of them out. And I think it was 3 that we got out of there.
It was the 3 survivors, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Because they had to escape and evade, or a little bit. They had to hunker down.
One of the guys was still there. They had to hide him. I think it was Ron Andrus, and they had to hide him. And he took a real bad gunshot to the leg, and I believe he had an artillery bleed. And he's lucky to be alive himself. So
Well, I mean, that's one thing that you can focus on, that your actions did save his life. I mean, all three of them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it
hang
was.
your hat on that.
You know, I feel proud about what we all did, but I wished it had been more successful than what it was, because they deserved to come home.
Yeah.
If nothing else, at least being found. And to my knowledge right now, I think bodies have never been recovered by any search teams or anything.
Well, there was a pretty big bounty on the LRRP Rangers, wasn't there, for NVA, if they brought back a LRRP?
Yeah, especially a hotel company. I think I think our company got the most valorous decorations of the Vietnam War, and we were so effective in what we did. And at that time, the North Vietnamese in VC had a bounty on our heads if they could catch one of us and bring us back, or parts of us back, to prove that they got us, that they would get, I think it was 2,000 piastres and a small fish farm.
Wow. That's a pretty good bounty, Ed.
Yeah, oh yeah, at the time it was. But, you know, later on during the war, the North Vietnamese started their own teams. And they used those teams to search for us by using our tactics and everything like that.
Huh. Did you ever run into one of those guys? Did you ever run into one of those teams?
Don't really know for sure, but we usually, when we go out on a mission, we find us a heavily traveled trail. We set up a position about 12, 15 foot off the trail and set our claymores and that and everything, and try to watch and observe how the trail and what was coming down the trail. And a lot of times the North Vietnamese didn't have radios and stuff like we did. What they did, they carried AKs and SKSs, and they shot around in the air. And no, we carried the AKs and SKSs. When we heard them shoot, we'd shoot back. And so what they would do is come to our location towards the sound of our return shot. You know, once they got in the killing range, you know, we'd clack our claymores and be done with it. Sometimes we get out normally on a lift ship, but sometimes we had to get out on a McGuire rig too. And that's a heck of a ride, is all I can tell you.
Let's hope you don't hit some branches on the way out of there.
Yeah, I loved it, man. That
listeners,
McGuire, it saved my butt so many times. I believe I had to get lifted out 5 or 6 different times by McGuire rig, and I didn't mind it at all. The faster,
yeah, it becomes a carnival ride, yeah?
Yeah, really.
And for those listening who aren't sure what a McGuire rig is, that's when the helicopter drops down the harnesses, the ropes, you put it around your chest. And how long? Like 40 feet, 50 feet?
Well, usually what we do, we'd carry a rope with us on our equipment. And what we do, we tie the rope around our chest and put a D-ring on the rope, and the helicopter would drop 50-foot ropes down to us. We snap to them, and they take us straight out of the jungle, lift us up and out. But they could only take 2 or 3 at a time, 3 at a time, But I do remember one day I was getting extracted on a jungle penetrator, and we had to get out of an area fast, and medevac was the closest thing to us. So he hovered over our location and he dropped a jungle penetrator. And on the jungle penetrator, it had a spring-loaded seat. It flipped back up, and you push it down to sit on it. And you kind of hold on to the front of it, and it takes you out. But the first and the only time, I think I fell off that thing 3 or 4 times because my pack was so heavy, it just pulled me off. But I think about my fourth time of grabbing hold of it, I got it that time. But it took several falls for me because, like I say, the pack was so heavy it was just pulling you off of it.
Wow.
When you were on the
terrifying.
McGuire rig, did you ever do the Superman as your?
I carried the red cape in my left pouch, you know.
Yeah. Tell the pilot, don't take off yet. I got to put my cape on.
Yeah, really.
All right. So Dustin was talking about coming home.
Yeah. So Japan. Once the cute Japanese nurses decided you were fit to travel, where'd you end up?
Well, they got orders to. They wanted to send me back to Germany. I said, no, I'd rather not go to Germany. And can you find something in the States for me? They said, well, we can send you to Fort Hood, Texas. I said, that sounds good to me. So after I come home on leave and went to Fort Hood, Texas, I went to replacement center there. And when I was inside the replacement center, I didn't know what units were or anything. And I noticed there was a little flyer up on a billboard. And it was Company A, 75th Rangers there. And they were asking for volunteers. And so when the guy come back to me and asked me what unit I'd like to go to, he named off a few. I said, I'd like to go with Alpha Company 75th Rangers up there. I kind of believe he tried to talk me out of it. He said, you don't want to go with that group because they're a bunch of crazy people. They jump all the time. And they just do crazy things. I said, that's where I want to go with because that's how I just left, you know. So got with Alpha Company 75th Rangers at Fort Hood and stayed with them until I got in the military.
You jump out of some planes or?
Yeah, quite a few. Helicopters, planes, you name it. We jumped out about everything, day and night.
God. That sounds like a good time.
It was. Martha Ray came watch this one day. She came to our unit and she was dressed in her green beret and her Army uniform, Colonel Maggie, and we did like a combat jump for our C-141 and combat jump at 800 feet or less, you know. Wow. I think the time I exit the aircraft and time my chute opened, I was on the ground. That's how fast, how low we were, you know. Too low, really.
Yeah.
But kind of fun for someone that age, right?
Yeah, it really was, yeah. And Alpha Company 75th at Fort Hood comprised of a lot of different other guys that were Ranger unit, like Papa Company, November Company, Charlie Company. You know, it was 13 Ranger companies in Vietnam. A lot of those guys spent time at Alpha Company.
Oh, cool. Just on their way out, like that's where you all ended up?
Either that or they stayed in. There at one time, I was going to stay in myself. And as a matter of fact, they tried to talk me into staying in. I said, no, I done made my mind to get out. And so I got out just before they formed battalions in 74.
Wow. What'd you go do?
What did I do? When
yeah.
I went home, and I'd kind of wish I'd have stayed in at the time. I still really wish I'd have stayed in now, but I can't go back and fix that now. But I stayed affiliated one way or another with the military and still do to this day. But when I got home, I had a real hard time adjusting back to civilian life. And it got to the point where you didn't talk about Vietnam. Nobody wanted to hear it. And you got a lot of negative comments and everything. So I just kept this stuff bottled up in me for years, many years.
And I've been going back and forth in my mind about whether to ask this question because it's covered very emotionally and eloquently in the movie, but I think it's important to ask in a lot of different platforms because I see too many people try to deny that this happened. And you Was it when you first came back, you had a gentleman give you a very, an elderly gentleman give you a very special greeting back to the United States in terms of,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
all right. I didn't
I
want to get to
remember.
the ending, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was as I was coming back my first tour in Vietnam, I was coming home, and I spent one day in San Francisco, and they told me in San Francisco to go buy some civilian clothes. Don't be caught in your uniform. So I bought me some civvies and went to Frisco, stayed a day. Then I flew from there and went to Chicago, and I stayed in Chicago a day just to see the place. By the time I got home, my parents had done called the Red Cross trying to find out where the hell I was at, because I'd called them 3 days earlier and said I'm on my way home, and 3 days later I still hadn't got there. But when I was at O'Hare Airport in June '68, I had this elderly man walk up to me, and he kind of looked at me and he spit on me, and it shocked me. I said, "Wow, why did he do that?" I didn't say that, man. I was in such a state of shock and he walked away. But over the years, I figured he was either against the war or he had somebody killed close to him in Vietnam. And it was hard to say. There was no verbal communication at all. He left me in a state of shock.
Wow.
And,
Yeah. And just to reiterate for the deniers who not only want to deny that troops got spit on, but cast aspersions to anyone who would even dare suggest that they were, you, Ed Beal, were personally spit on when you came home from Vietnam.
yeah.
Well, I'm sorry that happened to you, Ed.
Yeah. Yeah. Things happen, buddy.
It's true that.
Yeah. But I think one of your phrases was, you know, if someone wants to be ignorant, let them be ignorant on their own time.
That's right. That's exactly right.
But when you came home, how was it kind of reintegrating with your friends or your family? Just that initial and over time.
Well, it's when I got back home, I was trying to adjust to being back home. But once I started getting out around my friends and stuff, I felt even stranger because we had nothing in common no more. And really, after I realized that, we just didn't hang out no more. And I more or less kind of stayed to myself, you know. I had a family and I was trying to raise a family and work full time and just the things that I needed to do. And like I say, I just kept to myself and kept my mouth shut until back in the 80s when I got to the point where enough is enough. I'm not doing this no more. Then that's when I got together with a bunch of other vets in the local area and everything like that. And we made things happen for us, you know. Kind of miss those times too, to really jumpstart the whole situation. And
that's a really nice way of putting it. We made it happen for us.
Yeah.
Did you guys find a VFW office, or did you just get together at somebody's house? What did you guys do?
Well, we got together as a group and we kind of tried to join. We never joined. It wasn't a VFW or anything like that. It was Vietnam Veterans of America, something like that. It's been so long ago, Dustin, I really can't remember. But anyway, we'd meet in Greensboro at a local bar. And we just sit and talk. And as time went on, more vets started coming to it. And once we got a large group of vets, we kind of organized and started our own little chapter. And we conducted a business. We did a lot of things for other vets, you know, and for the organization itself. But, we more or less talked to each other and tried to heal as best as we could.
Well, that's the right thing, man.
And so that was veteran talking to veteran. We first talked to you 4 years ago. We met in Las Vegas at your guys' mini reunion. In our very first interview, was that the first time you had talked? Well, I don't want to say first time, but in terms of an in-depth discussion with a non-veteran, I mean, we've known each other for 2 days. Was that kind of the first time you had sat down for that kind of conversation outside of your veteran group?
Yeah, it was the first time that anything like that ever happened in my life. And even in Las Vegas, I was struggling then. I was struggling big. I was struggling. But as time goes on, things are better. One thing Vietnam did to me, it destroyed my emotions. I have no control over them no more. And, there's so many triggers, old songs, smells, a lot of different things. It just brings it all back. And sometimes it affects me pretty hard.
Yeah, and I have to, thank you on a number of levels. A, for trusting us, not just to make this movie and to come on our podcast, but just trusting us to sit down in a room with us and actually have the conversation and to talk as openly as you did with Dustin and myself and with Charles. I remember that day well for a number of reasons, but one was, and I told Dwayne the same thing, and I have to thank you for this. Your interview was one of the watershed moments for us. We talked for hours in the room. And when we went to dinner that night, you were smiling, like you seemed different. I'm not going to say, oh God, everything was solved.
At the Harley Davis place.
Yeah, I was going to say, you picked up that photo girl at the Harley Davidson Cafe.
Yeah, sure did. I got it hanging on the wall right now.
Yeah, there was that 23-year-old girl from Ukraine who, her job was to sell pictures, and she had a fish on with Ed.
There you go. That's it.
You had the biggest smile. And I looked. Go ahead.
I want to say one more thing that happened this past Memorial Day. In the documentary you did, I talked about something I had to do. It's pretty horrific. And something that I've been living with for 50 years now. I've never felt sorry for myself because of what I had to do, but I didn't like it because I was put in that position to do it. But this Memorial Day, I was sitting around watching the ceremonies on TV, and it hit me. I'd give closure to a family. And I never looked at it that way. I give that family closure. They got their son back. How would it have been? It would have been devastating to me if we'd said, okay, we can't get him. Let's go. We got to get out of here because we was under fire at the time. That would have been devastating to me because it'd have been on my mind just like anything. For 50 years. And I don't know if I could have lived with that night.
No, you guys have a crazy important job. You provide closure to an incredible number of families.
Well, and you provided sons back to an incredible number of families with all the men that you rescued.
Yeah,
that's true too.
Yeah.
Sons and husbands and brothers, all because you guys would volunteer and rainy, foggy day where the pilot had to hold his dog tags to make sure you weren't upside down. It was so foggy, and you still went out and did it. And then, you know, 3 men were able to come home. So
Yeah.
I'm happy that you could see that this year. That, you know, that makes me quite happy for you, Ed.
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to tell you that because it just happened a short period of time ago, and I can't. It just hit me like a ton of bricks. Quit thinking
really
about
good
what
to
it's
hear.
done to you. Think about what you did for another family.
That's right.
And was it a calming ton of bricks, like acceptance? Like, I mean, yeah, you know what I mean, Dustin. Stop laughing now. When you say it hit you like a ton of bricks, was it peace that you got from that, or?
No, I started crying immediately when I realized the thought I had in my head after hearing another family talk on TV. It hit me all of a sudden, and I started crying, and I couldn't stop. I actually had to go get my fiance, Lynn, and me and her got in a truck, and we took off to the mountains just for a short day trip. I had to get out and clear my head. But that was the first time in 50 years I actually thought of it like that. I don't know why, but it just hit me.
And
Well, that sounds incredibly overwhelming and really cathartic.
Did you call me a name?
I said that sounded.
you call me cathartic? Yes, Ed, he was. He was calling you a name. You should take it out on him when we visit you.
That's right.
I'm an instigator.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
Yeah, no problem. It's enjoyable. One of the other things, I'm going to put air quotes around this thank you, Ed. The aftermath of that interview in Vegas, at that point, we thought we were going to be doing one filming trip, bing, bam, boom, movie's out, we're done. But you mentioned that your daughter had always wanted to talk to you and you put it off, but based off how you felt coming out of our interview, you were going to talk with her. And we thought, okay, well, we can't, you know, it's great to see like in the moment that the talk helped, but, you know, will it over time, will that moment stick with you? And will you actually talk with your daughter? And that's when we made the decision, not like there that day, but looking back on that moment, we made the decision to keep following up with you guys over the years. So thank you for turning our movie into a multi-year project now.
Yeah. Always
for the greater. For the greater, for the much greater. But did you have that talk with your daughter that you wanted to have leaving that interview? Did you go and do it?
Yeah, we talked, and I've got into a little more depth about what kind of person I am and how the war changed me. Now Kathy, my oldest daughter, is coming up from San Antonio, Texas, probably tomorrow, and she's going to spend a couple of days with us. But she's been in the military all her life, and she's been from country to country, from base to base with her husband and everything. And I'm going to talk to her in more depth when she gets here. So I'll be 2 daughters I'll be talking to.
Well, good luck. I believe in you.
All right, Dustin.
How are you feeling, you know, night before that? And you've done this a couple times now. Is it getting easier? Or, you know, how do you feel going into this weekend?
Oh, I feel great. I mean, I feel good. I feel more relaxed. I feel more at ease because I know where y'all coming from. That makes me feel more comfortable, and you put me at ease. And it seems like I can talk to you a little bit about things that happened or how it's changed my life. It's hard to just talk to anybody about, because a lot of people just don't want to hear it, or they just don't understand it all. I've even had one person tell me, won't you just turn that stuff off? Like I got an on-off switch, I can turn it on and turn it off when I want to. It don't work like that. Vietnam's been with me for over 52 years. It rings in my head, but I've been through so many PTSD programs through the VA system itself, to where they have taught me a lot. How to help yourself and how to watch out for different situations or different things. And it's helped tremendously. I went through the 30-day program, PTSD program in Salem, Virginia, 3 different times, and they put you through psychodramas and all kind of stuff just to bring the stuff out where you can deal with it. You can't deal with it when you got it stuffed down inside you. You have to lighten that load. And I'm pretty selective when I want to lighten that load. Just don't do it to anybody. I do it around people I trust or other veterans.
And so, for any veterans who could be watching this podcast, when we put it out next Monday, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, with the way the internet lives, any veteran that thinks they want to talk or kind of feels this need to talk, or maybe on the other hand is resisting talking, what would you say to that veteran who's watching for them at this point right now?
You have to break those chains. You have to reach out. I know it's a hard thing to do, but you're doing yourself a big disservice when you keep everything bottled up inside you. And you have to break those chains. You have to move forward. You just can't stay stuck in the same rut all the time. Oh, woe is me. You can't do that. You have to get out of that cycle and break that chain. That's what I did. And it's probably the best things I could ever done.
And for family members as well, go to the other side. Let's say my wife or my brother is a veteran who's home from deployment or has transitioned out of the military. What advice would you have for a family member on how they could open up a line of communication with a veteran?
Well, you have to get to where you understand each other. You have to understand each other to know what you're talking about. And I'm the type of person, I can pick up vibes from family members or even friends about whether they want to hear it or not. So, but family members, if you really care about the veteran, you need to talk to him and understand his perspective about everything.
Mm.
Maybe he's doing the same thing. He's not wanting to talk to you because he don't want to upset you about different things that just made him the way he is, or just the trauma itself. It's a monster. It used to be a monster inside me, and I wasn't going to let that monster control me. I took control of the situation. But family just has to get together. Encouragement, hope. You have to understand each other, and you need to start that dialogue. Even if it's a small one, at least it's a start. Then you can go from there.
Yeah, this is not a one conversation.
No, it's not. It's not an overnight deal. It takes years. It took me years to get to where I'm at right now. And I'm pretty proud of myself, that I think I did it the right way.
You should be proud of yourself. You've done good.
Yeah, and I will say, We almost named this podcast over a quote that you had in our second interview. We almost named it, but we didn't think it was easy to market around. But we almost named it the Know Their Story podcast.
The Another Story?
Know Their Story, because you told us.
Oh, like, Know Their Story, yeah.
If you have someone in your life, like, go listen to their story. Like
you have to listen to their story. If you don't, you can't understand where he's coming from. That's where the communication part comes into play. You have to talk to each other. And like I say, if it's just for a short period of time to start off, it can grow into something bigger and better in the long run.
Perfect advice. I've run through my conversation topics. How are you doing, Mr. Dustin?
I'll hang out with that all day long, man. Don't get me started. I want to talk about sports here in a second, and we got a lot to talk about.
Actually,
there have been some comic books that have happened in the last 6 months that I want to talk to Ed about.
Remember this, Ed? This is the bubble that you gave me last time we visited, right here in my office with all my other Star Wars stuff.
I see Darth Vader over in the corner.
Yeah, and there's a little Lego Star Wars ship, Y-wing. So I've got other stuff all around. So
you tell Dustin I got my comic books spread out, and we'll get together with that when he gets here.
All right. Well, I'll come check out your whole collection when you get there.
Now, Dustin, I'm supposed to tell you.
Oh,
what is your most valuable comic book, Ed? Or most treasured?
I got several comics. As the very low number of Spider-Man, I believe it's number 11. And it's worth several hundreds of dollars, and I've got many boxes full of, mint condition comic books from the Spider-Man area, and
you have a lot of X-Men too, right?
Yeah, X-Men. I'm into sports cards right now. Selling little sports cards on eBay.
Oh yeah,
I'm getting them certified through PSA and keeping the ones I want and selling the others. So I got to downsize on a lot of my collection. And
this has been my newest addiction that my wife is little Angus Young with the Funko Pop.
What? Was that you when you was a little boy?
I could only hope to be as cool as Angus Young. AC/DC all the way.
Dave, you are way cooler than Angus Young. I don't know if you know this. It's about yourself.
I cannot rock the schoolboy outfit like he does.
I bet we could. I think we just haven't tried it out. I bet we could make you rock a schoolboy outfit pretty amazingly.
I bet we're never ever gonna find out.
Yeah.
I will lay whatever odds we need to that we will never find that out. Cue picture of me in that next frame. Narrator voice. I did, in fact, find out what I look now. Ed, let me open up the floor to you. Anything we didn't cover? I give our guests the parting shot, the parting go. What would you like to take the moment to say anything to our audience?
Yes, what I'd like to say about the whole project itself, I want to thank you, and both you and Dustin, for what you're doing. You're doing a tremendous service, not just to us, but to other vets also. And I just hope once the public sees this stuff that they can start to understand a little bit what the Vietnam veterans went through when they came home and what some are still experiencing today. Because if it's not out there and you don't talk about it, you don't have a clue what went on or what happened. And the way things are going now, history is being erased fast. We can't let this fall by the wayside and be forgotten. No war can be forgotten. Korean War, World War II, no war. Because war is hell, but combat's a MF.
Well, hope the whole audience can fill in what MF means. But no, and thank you not only for Vietnam veterans and coming on, and hopefully people can look at someone like you who was at Khe Sahn, was in Tet, was with the LRRPs, was with the Apache troop, and saw, for you, someone who was, you could say, been there, done that multiple times. So for you to come out and say, no, this is okay to feel this way, this is okay to talk. Hopefully this will inspire your lead, will inspire other Vietnam veterans, but also modern day veterans, the first Gulf War, the current wars, that this is a very common thing. Like, this isn't, you can go back to World War II, World War I, letters home from any of the wars. Like, this is okay to think about and to feel, when it's okay to talk about that. So thank you for being a point man on this.
No, my pleasure, buddy. My pleasure.
So you want to do the sign off, Dustin? Remind everyone to click the likes, or you want me to do it?
Yeah, if you're watching us for the first time on Facebook or YouTube or any of the other channels that we're broadcasting proudly on, please click a like, click follow along. And if you're watching on our premiere on Facebook here in the next couple seconds, it's going to say that we'll be right back, but we won't. This is the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it says video feed interrupted, but that's not the case. It's just me hitting stop recording. Ed, I'm going to hit stop recording now. Don't go anywhere, because we will hang out and chat about coming to visit you for the movie here. And
thanks for watching us today, everybody. Ed, thanks for being here. And,
thank you. My pleasure, guys.
We'll see you guys next time.
All right, so we're going to end in 5,